Welcome to Museum Middays with Ketchikan Museums. I want to thank you all for joining us. My name is Erica Jane Christian. I'm the program coordinator with Ketchikan Museums, and we're delighted that you're able to spend a little bit of your afternoon with us today. Today we are joined with we're joined by the Haayk Foundation, David Robert Boxley from Metlakatla, telling us a little bit more about the foundation, the work they do, and what the future might bring. So we'd love to let David further introduce and tell us a little bit more about the Haayk Foundation.
Thank you. Lu am goru nwil haks gudak wasam SM'ALGYA. Ibam lacha di wayu lachibu di ego takwan di wil watku adagwa di wil zago. Students ak all ligi all ak all will sulaux and algorithm at we lakes a hethel some man dak Pashago in the method dak wasam goal is sit at the Haayk Foundation at a tretni go walum dem shamom the duels SM'ALGYA. Hello everyone, my name is David Robert Boxley. I'm of the Wolf Clan of the Ts'msyen Nation from Metlakatla, Alaska. I live here in Metlakatla. I've been studying our language intensely for about 6 years since I moved back home. And we have so much work left to do. But I'm going to tell you all about how the Haayk Foundation started and what we're doing to help the revitalization of our language. So I will share my screen with you. In order to talk about what the Haayk Foundation is doing and the state that our language is in, I have to give you a little bit of a backstory. So my people originate from the Skeena River in British Columbia, what is now known as British Columbia. We call that river Ts'msyen. So the word Ts'msyen means from inside the Skeena River. That's what Ts'msyen, anglicized. Ts'msyen is how we say it. Our people were fishermen and people of the cedar. Our homes, canoes, clothing were made out of cedar, and the life cycle of the salmon controlled our lives. In the summers, we'd go put up food, and in the winters, shelter down, and that's when we would feast and potlatch. Our neighbors are the Tlingit and the Haida. Our cultures are extremely similar, except for that Ts'msyen people are divided into 4 exogamous groups rather than 2. Tlingit and Haidas have the eagle and raven clans, or moieties they call it. We have a phreatry system where there are 4: eagle, raven, wolf, and killer whale. This is a general map of Ts'msyen territory. This is Prince Rupert, British Columbia. This is the Skeena River. And once you pass, little ways past Terrace is the origin place. Actually, no, closer up to Hazelton, here we go, is the origin place of SM'ALGYA speaking people. SM'ALGYA means the true talk or real language. Sim means real and algya is speaking. In our Adao, our oral history, after the flood, the people who lived near at this village called Temlacham, up near what's modern day Hazelton, dispersed down the Skeena and Nass rivers. The people who stayed up near the upper parts of the Skeena became the Giksen. We moved down the river to the coast, and all of the tribes and villages that were established along there became Ts'msyen, and the people who went down the Nass River became the Niska. So the Giksen, Niska, and Ts'msyen peoples all speak a dialect of that original language from Temlacham. In the 1830s, the Hudson Bay Company established a fort in Ts'msyen territory right here at what we call Lachguk Alams. They called it Fort Simpson. And in order to not be out-traded in our own territory first one, and then 9 tribes of Ts'msyens moved to the fort in order to both control trade, but also then compete with each other. This is him much older, but William Duncan was sent by the Church Missionary Society of England to Christianize and quote unquote civilize the Indians at Port Ts'msyen. He knew that he couldn't do what he was sent there to do if we stayed around the potlatching that was happening at the fort, along with the negative influences of early contact with the introduction of alcohol, firearms, and disease. He and his followers decided to move back to a channel where a lot of their winter villages had been, called Machlachachla, at an area that was originally called Spurumkaltsap. It was a village called that, along that channel. And they decided to name the village after the channel and anglicized it to Metlakatla. We became very famous at the time for what could be done to, again, quote unquote, civilize native people. We had a blacksmith shop, cannery, trading post. It was the largest church north of San Francisco and west of Chicago. It was, they called it Duncan's Utopia. Now, obviously, Utopia isn't a real thing, but we were quite well known at the time. Due to conflicts with the Church of England and the Canadian government, we decided, rather than to fight, because they tried to take over our mission and denied us the right to own land, we decided to ask the United States government if we could move to Alaska. And we ended up moving to Annette Island. Recently, I've discovered some history that talked about that very long ago, a group of Ts'msyen moved north to Beam Canal. And those people eventually, through intermarriage and contact with Tlinkits, became the Kiksadi and Ganachadi people. And the Ganachadi had a village here, and they called it Tak-an. And in SM'ALGYA, we say Takwan. That's our pronunciation of that Tlingit word. And the tribe of Ts'msyen who had moved up, their relatives continued to trade with the Ganachadi there at Takwan. And I never knew why until I learned that they were their own relatives. So it wasn't some happenstance that we moved here. Our people knew the area already. We had long traded in this territory. And as the story goes, Chief Johnson in Ketchikan, who suggested this as a good spot for us, he himself was half Ts'msyen. So the borders between our peoples were not like modern colonized borders. They were a blending. There was intermarriage happening up and down, and we knew this area very well. So in August of 1887, 823 Ts'msyen made their way from Metlakatla, British Columbia, to Annette Island. We lived on the beach for 2 years until we started to clear the lot for town. This was the only Tlingit pole still standing when we arrived, and it was sent up to, it's in Sheldon Jackson Museum in Sitka now. Our men tied ropes around stumps and pulled them out by hand to clear the lot for our community. And it's amazing to me that they did this twice. They did it once in Metlakatla, BC, and then in this almost the same generation moved again to build a community all over again, because we wanted to be in control of our own destiny. So this is the Metlakatla that my father grew up in. Our language by this point was spoken by the old people and a couple of families who had held on to it. But what happened was William Duncan never discouraged our language. He preached in our language. He spent the first year he was in Port Ts'msyen learning SM'ALGYA so that he would not be misunderstood. He didn't want an interpreter messing up his message. His school was bilingual. It wasn't until, after the move, the remnants of what you can think of as Ts'msyen culture were, we kept eating our traditional foods, because even though missionaries were taught to teach people to farm, you can't really farm on the Northwest coast. So we kept getting our traditional foods. Our women were allowed to keep weaving because they could sell the baskets. And some men made model totem poles, even a few full-size, but still tourist type totem poles. Other than that, chiefs had to give up their position in order to live in Metlakatla, and potlatching and anything having to do with ceremony was against the rules from that point on. In 1916 or 15, 16, that year, we had noticed that other schools in their area in Southeast Alaska, that their children were getting better educations than us. So our people asked for the government to put in a school so we could get the same education everyone else was. The downside to that was that from then on, speaking our language was punishable at school. And there are horror stories about what happened to our children. And with what's been going on with the attention brought to residential and boarding schools recently, it's a painful thing to point out that we didn't even have to be sent away in order for those things to happen to us. We were punished right here at the U.S. government school. So Metlakatla grew out of that that history of colonization forcing us to change, forcing us to move, and eventually forcing us to give up our language. And even though we have very proudly done well for ourselves, our people have been self-sufficient and running our community all these years, and we're very proud Americans. All of that we went through causes trauma. And even when we're not aware of it, it is something that all Indigenous people have gone through. We know now through, this is a byproduct of learning a language. I didn't think I was going to learn that your DNA is altered by extreme trauma. It's a field of study called epigenetics. And all Indigenous people have gone through some version of that trauma. And it affects how we live today. And thankfully, though, heritage language reacquisition has been shown to help to heal those things. This is my friend Gavin Hudson and my girlfriend Candy McGilton. The three of us started the Haayk Foundation. It came out of, I'll go back and pause on these guys for a minute. It came out of conversations Gavin and I had had. He was working at a cafe here in Metlakatla. I was home visiting. I lived down south for a good chunk of my life. And it was always these talks of, think of what we could do. We could do this, we could do that. And I would often say, you know what you guys ought to do? We got to, because I wasn't living here. And Gavin said very matter-of-factly to me, the only way you're going to get this done is if you move home and do it. It was just him, one, I don't think he wanted me to tell him what he should be doing. but if you want things to happen, you gotta do it. So so I did. Our inspiration came from a lot of people, and I'm sure that even if I had all day, there would be names that I would forget to mention today. So I just want to start off by saying, if I forget anyone else that anyone thinks is important to the SM'ALGYA movement, it was not intentional. I'm just trying to fit this into a short presentation. People like Russell Hayward here, who was my great-grandmother's first cousin, and Arnold Booth, both of whom are gone now. Russell passed in the 90s and Arnold passed a few years ago, were the beginnings of the SM'ALGYA movement here in Metlakatla, among others, but they were two out front figures in that process. And Arnold would often go back and forth to British Columbia, working with linguists over there with his wife, Mary. And Russell developed, along with the fluent speakers here in Metlakatla, orthography here that is still in use, that Donna Mae Roberts uses. She teaches through UAS still to this day, and has produced a lot of learning materials, and is a constant source of inspiration, because even as an elder, she's still working very hard for our language. The Haayk Foundation would not have been able to do anything it did without Sarah Booth. Her SM'ALGYA name was Totem, Heart of the Eagle's Nest. She was Mary's, as I mentioned, Arnold Booth and his wife Mary. She was Mary's sister. Her father, Alfred Eaton, was an important man here in Metlakatla, and he and his wife raised their children speaking Ts'msyen in their home, and thank goodness, because they were the ones in the last few years who still had that knowledge to pass on. We started out very modestly. Again, it was just the three of us. We thought, along with Sarah working with us, we thought, well, we're just going to do what we can, what we feel like we can contribute to this movement. We were lucky enough to have teachers like Velma Nelson here, who was Sarah's cousin from over in British Columbia, come over to help us. This is my father, who was probably fluent as a little boy in our home, but you know, you grow up and you live in Seattle for 40 years, you get a bit rusty, but he still understands a lot. And teachers like this man, who his name was Bossy Bolton, who was a relative of ours from Hartley Bay. He was a chief and really was an inspiration for what we've been trying to do. So as I said, you know, this started out small. I'm an artist. Gavin is trained as he went to culinary school. Candy is a weaver and a beater. So the idea of the three of us starting a nonprofit for language revitalization is kind of nuts. It was just, we just felt like we had the passion for it, and thought we could help. So using my end of this as an artist, I've never shared these actually. These are my scribblings for the beginning of a logo for us, and we ended up on this logo, which is based off of a bentwood box shape. And the idea was, and the name Haayk in our language means spirit. It was the closest thing we could think of as like identity and what it means to be Ts'msyen. So, and the box is the container of that knowledge, in this case of our language. We do fundraisers. We often at home during either 4th of July or our Founders Day celebrations will sell T-shirts. We've done a lot over the years. We've made use of what we used to be called Booster, but it's Custom Ink's fundraising arm. It's convenient for us because you can order the shirts online. We don't have to mail them. The company mails them, and then they will just send a check. And all the money that has been used, that we've raised, has been to further our work. Gavin, Candy, and I don't make any money from the Haayk Foundation. It's all volunteer, and we spend the money on producing materials or paying fluent speakers for their time. Over the years, we've done a lot of different fundraisers, different designs, again, utilizing our talents to try to help us keep going. We partnered with SM'ALGYA Heritage Institute as a part of their Hashuka Mentor Apprentice program. And as we were nearing we were just going to be the contact in Metlakatla for this program, but as it got closer and people hadn't signed up, Candy and I thought, well, you and I sign up. And we spent 3 years working with Sarah every day. And our language learning jumped. Candy went from a complete novice to a high intermediate learner, and I went from probably an advanced novice to nearly, what do they call it? It's not fluent. It's the thing before fluent, I think advanced or something like that. I'm nearing conversational abilities in the language. Over 2015, 16, 17, the Haayk Foundation sponsored and hosted Founders Day feasts in Metlakatla. We would every year invite everyone to come on 7th of August and have a dinner. I believe the last year we did it here, we even offered a menu that was all in SM'ALGYA for everyone to let them know what they were being served that day. Over those years, we honored 3 elders with our Community Spirit Award. We honored Sarah Booth for her contributions to our language. She used to teach bilingual Somali at the school district here in Metlakatla and came out of retirement to help us. This is Ruth Booth, who we were celebrating her 50th year of her smokehouse here in Metlakatla. She comes from Port Simpson originally and has an incredible amount of knowledge for our foods and medicines, and she's done an amazing job teaching that to her children and grandchildren. Her granddaughter, Naomi Leask, teaches Ts'msyen studies at the high school here in Metlakatla, and she's a wealth of knowledge as well. And it's funny, I tried to find better pictures of us, but this was when we honored Jack Hudson, and I'm glad we did. Jack passed away now a couple of years ago. He taught Ts'msyen art at the high school here in Metlakatla for over 30 years, and was the beginning of Native art again for our people in the 1970s, before my dad ever started carving. There's Jack. His son now is the Native art teacher here in Metlakatla. We've hosted immersion events. This is from one of our immersion events where we brought over Chief Matthew Hill from Kitkatla, and John Reese from Ketchikan, and Sarah was there. And we spent a week of immersion type activities, and amazing getting to listen to John and Matthew speak to each other. It was great. Yeah, they would just go on and on and on. It was fabulous. One of the big things that we got to do that is all available online, you can find this on our website, is this bilingual curriculum called Twining Cedar. It was something that we, it's funny, Holly Churchill, who was my auntie, was over here house sitting, and we were going up to the pool every day with her, and we got talking about how formline, our two-dimensional art form that I practice, all of the old words for that are gone. They've been gone for a long time. It had to do with when potlatch was banned, the old masters couldn't keep passing on their knowledge because there was no need to produce those things, and those words fell out of use. And we didn't want that to happen for basket weaving. So we thought, well, let's document that. The other reason is when our women were allowed to keep weaving here in Takwan, in Metlakatla, Alaska, we developed a style of basket weaving that is unique to this island. It's Ts'msyen weaving, but it's borrowed bits and pieces from Haida and Tlingit weaving, and we wanted to preserve that and the language at the same time. So there are instructional videos that come with that. The bilingual guide is on our website, and you can learn how to make Annette Island style baskets and in SM'ALGYA if you wanted to. So here's an old basket on the left, and a sort of a replica that Candy made on the right. She spent a lot of time with Dolores Churchill, who she's holding a basket that was made by my great grandmother. Dolores in the 1970s spent a lot of time with Flora Mather in Ketchikan, and came over to Metlakatla and learned from our weavers, including my great grandmother over here, learned how to make Annette Island style baskets. And although those old masters of these baskets are gone now, Dolores knows how to do it. So Dolores and Holly spent a lot of time with Candy, and Candy has along with making the weaving guide, has learned how to make these Annette Island style baskets. And again, she was just up at the school recently helping Naomi with some weaving stuff, and she's getting quite good. The Haayk Foundation has also been collecting old Annette Island style baskets that we've been able to find places. Some of them have been donated to us. And this collection is in our office here in Metlakatla that if people want, they can arrange a visit to come see. Our time with Sarah was precious. She was a saint, patient, but at the same time determined that the sounds coming out of our mouths sounded right to her fluent ears. And I will always be very appreciative of having that kind of a teacher, someone who was patient, but also made sure I got it right. And it's that influence that has really pushed the Haayk Foundation in everything we do. We make sure that anything we put out has been checked by a fluent speaker, and so that the language that or language materials that we're putting out there, when pronounced, will sound good to a fluent speaker's ear. And that's the whole point of this. We're not trying to just get the language out for the sake of it. We want to make sure that the speakers understand us and the integrity of the language, because there are sounds in SM'ALGYA that are unique to our language and have to be pronounced a certain way, even though there's variations. You know, some villages have completely different words. I'll give you an example. In Prince Rupert, the word for raven is gaach, G-A-A-X, and G has an underline under it. In Metlakatla, Sarah and from Russell's materials and other writings I've seen, we say gaach with that back G again at the end instead of an X. It comes from the same place, the X and that back G, but it's just the slightest variation. But either way, fluent speakers will understand either way. There was a Bible that was published in the late 1800s, produced, I believe, in Metlakatla, British Columbia. And my father was given a copy of it. It's not quite the entire New Testament, but it's most of it. And he spent a few years handwriting the entire thing, because he's a dinosaur and refused to use a computer. And wrote it in a more up-to-date orthography, and then he handed it off to us and said, "Will you guys type this up?" So I spent about a year typing. I felt like an old scribe and replicating Bibles back in the Middle Ages or something. And then Sarah started going over them with us again to make sure that what we transcribed made sense in our language. And she was able to make it through the first four, through the four Gospels before she passed in June of 2020. This is a painting done by my friend Chris Hopkins of Sarah. And I just can never thank her enough. And we miss her a lot. After her passing, I immediately had this urge or sense of urgency. Okay, we gotta get to work. I mentioned Bossy Bolton earlier. This is Bossy's sister, Teresa. And she was very generously willing to pick up where we had left off with Sarah. And I've been working with her 5 nights a week for the last year. We've gone through the Bible now, and now we're spending time practicing conversation. And she's continuing to help us make new learning materials. We've got the Bible, which will be out soon. There are book ideas we have that we're working on, and we're going to keep charging ahead. before I talk about this, we partnered with SM'ALGYA Heritage Institute for their Baby Raven Reads program. We translated with Sarah nearly all of the Baby Raven Reads books, which will be coming out over a period of time coming up. The first one that was published was this one called SM'ALGYA. When you buy this one, there is a YouTube posting of me reading this, so you can follow along with the book in SM'ALGYA.
Fantastic.
You can go to our Facebook page. We tend to post things at least when we can, seasonal type things, carving pumpkins and stuff like that. Okay, I'll get to them in a minute. All right, back to this. In the 1930s, early 1930s, these totem poles were put up in downtown Ketchikan in front of a curio shop. They were ordered by that business by Chief Niece Lute, Sidney Campbell, who was from Metlakatla. He was one of the pioneers to Metlakatla. And he was one of the ones that continued carving for sale during that time period when we weren't allowed to do things for potlatch and ceremony. These were purchased in the 1950s by a man named George Barbet from Geneva, Switzerland. And they were put in the Museum of Ethnography of Geneva, or they stood outside there for many years. Eventually they were taken down. And my father and I were brought over there a number of years ago to take a look at them and tell them what they thought. They were considering standing them back up inside of their new museum. It ended up not working out due to Swiss fire codes, things like that. They wouldn't let them do it. But it got us in contact with them, and they invited the Haayk Foundation to contribute to an exhibit that just opened last month called Environmental Injustice, Indigenous Alternatives. And it's all about climate change from an Indigenous perspective and our thoughts on what should be done about climate change. So they had Candy produce many baskets and an octopus bag, devilfish bag. Candy's business is called Devilfish Designs. And there was a salmon offering mat and gathering baskets to talk about our relationship with the natural world. They play clips from the weaving guide videos of Dolores and Holly's in there. I created 4 masks that go along with stories that Gavin Hudson wrote that are his interpretation of the story of the boy who was taken by the salmon. And the whole point of the stories is, again, to show human beings' responsibility to the earth and the promise that we made to honor the salmon, but also the natural environment, and how if we don't do that, we're all in trouble. Gavin wrote a poem and 4 stories that were translated into Somali by us and Teresa Lowther. And what's super cool, and I'll show you the link for this in a moment, but there are these screens that you can go sit with headphones, and you can listen to the story, the 4 versions of the story that are, or 4 perspectives of the same story, and you can listen to them in French, English, or in SM'ALGYA. And so we were really grateful that the museum was willing to elevate our language that way and make it an equal part of the exhibition. I also made a transformation mask, a salmon transformation mask, to go in the exhibit, again, to talk about how salmon and the other animals in the world in Ts'msyen culture, when they would go to their homes, out of view of us, they'd walk inside their own longhouses and take off their cloaks, which was like the salmon skin, and underneath they look like us. And it's the whole exhibit is about Indigenous perspective, and that the traditional Ts'msyen perspective is that these beings are people too, like us, and that we should show them that respect. We just recently, again, because of what's been going on with residential school, the horrors that are being made known about that. We've known, Indigenous people have known for a long time that awful things happen at those places. But I've noticed that when it's become national news, it really does open up something in us that, you know, despite the fact that we were aware of it, it has really been weighing on us. And the Haayk Foundation felt very strongly that we should do something to help. So we asked the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition if we could do a fundraiser that would benefit them, and if they would use the money we raised to benefit their research and their work here in Alaska specifically. That's where we wanted that money to go. They agreed, and thanks to the school district who bought shirts for the staff and kids, when we told the NABs, is their abbreviation, when we told them that we were going to do this, we thought, well, our t-shirt campaigns will maybe raise $2,500 for you. You know, we just wanted to do our part. Thanks to the school district and a lot of people caring about this, we raised $19,000 for NABs, and there's the possibility of us doing it again because people didn't miss, you know, they missed out on the first one. We might do that. I talked earlier about trauma, and we've found that you can't separate, or you shouldn't, language revitalization from culture, from everyday life. The things that have happened to our people impact every part of our lives. And so if the Haayk Foundation could do something to help bring awareness to this and have our language on the shirt at the same time, it felt like the right thing to do. I want to talk a minute about other things going on. The Haayk Foundation is not the only game in town for SM'ALGYA. It never has been. There is a dedicated group of people who are fighting for SM'ALGYA language revitalization. This is a photo from a immersion or a grammar intensive that was held in Juneau, organized by Dr. Michael D'Angeli, and she brought over linguist Margaret Anderson and Velma Nelson to do a SM'ALGYA grammar intensive. And we got to participate in that along with a bunch of other folks up in Juneau. Here's the group. And these folks that live in Juneau, they have a Facebook page. You should follow them. It's organized by Alfie Price and Nancy Barnes. They are some of the most dedicated people to our language I've ever met. And they're my heroes as far as that. They meet weekly, and when COVID hit, they jumped over to Zoom, and they've been meeting that way. They're doing great. Here, this is David Lang. He's committed to becoming a SM'ALGYA, not only a SM'ALGYA speaker, but a teacher. And Victoria McCoy over in Ketchikan is also working in a program right now with SHI with David to become SM'ALGYA teachers. I think it's fabulous. We did another grammar intensive recently, and I wanted to show this because this is very much how weekends look for SM'ALGYA these days on Zoom. I want to point out a few folks. That's Mike Yell. This is Colin Brown, who's a linguist who's learning from Dr. Anderson, and we're grateful for that help in understanding our language. Is Nancy and Alfie. This is Marcella Asiksik, who puts on SM'ALGYA game nights and courses up in Anchorage. David Nelson, who teaches over here at the school, who helps with our language. That's his Victoria McCoy. And Jen McCarty is a teacher at the elementary school who puts as much SM'ALGYA as she possibly can into her classroom. And then we get on, there's 4 or 5 nights a week, there are SM'ALGYA get-togethers on Zoom. It's a really exciting time. When we first got going in 2015, it felt very isolated and alone. And it doesn't feel that way anymore. There's a lot of people that are really trying, and students, thanks to Zoom, who are calling in from British Columbia to take classes from like Donna May here in Alaska, or vice versa. We call in to interact with what's going on in British Columbia, and it's beautiful. I want to take a minute before I talk about any other links or anything to acknowledge John Reese, Midday, who just passed a few days ago. He was 99 years old. My great-grandfather lived to be 98, and I've always thought, at that point, while it's sad, what an amazing long life. And he was fortunate to be able to live that long, and he continued to contribute to SM'ALGYA for as long as he possibly could. He loved our language, and I always appreciated our conversations. So Ketchikan suffered a big loss with losing John, and just want to acknowledge him today. My people have been through a lot, and our language is still very much in danger. Our art and our dancing helped pull us out of a time where, our parents and grandparents, especially our grandparents, were taught to feel ashamed of being Native people. And dancing and the art is this tangible thing that gives you something to grab onto and be proud of. And I see it as my generation's responsibility to add in the stuff that is underneath the surface. The art and the dancing is the surface. We need all the stuff that goes underneath. And the most important part of all of that is our language. It's what makes us who we are. As I said earlier, Tlingit, Haida, Ts'msyen people, our cultures are nearly indistinguishable. It's our languages that make us unique in who we are. And I feel so strongly that this is the most important thing that I'll ever be a part of. I know that Gavin and Candy feel the same, as do everyone who is working to make sure our language survives. So I want to make sure that everyone hears me say right now that I am so appreciative of everyone who takes a minute, whether it's to say one word or whether they've dedicated themselves every day to learning our language. I'm so grateful to everyone who does that. And if we keep at it, there's still time. It's getting close, but there's still time. There are less than 70 or about 70 fluent speakers of SM'ALGYA left. There is now only one in Alaska, here in Metlakatla. Donna May lives down in Washington, I believe, and the rest are in British Columbia. But the reality is that not all of them are either able to or can work with young people to learn. So we're in crunch time, and Haayk Foundation is doing our best, doing our part. I'd like to say that anybody who's ever interested in learning the language, needs anything, you can contact us through our Facebook page or through our website. I'll go over there right now. Haaykfoundation.org is our website. You can go through, learn about what we do on the learning materials page, which we do try to add to from time to time. So it's good to check back. You can find the Twining Cedar and the bilingual weaving guide, Christmas hymns, oral history. Russell Hayward's daughter gave us permission to transcribe and post his materials, a book of prayers and hymns, board games, card games, the SM'ALGYA alphabet, different educational things like flashcards, bingo, Valentine's Day. We have regular Valentine's Day cards, SM'ALGYA Star Wars Valentine's cards.
Oh, yes.
And quarantine Valentine's cards, which were very fun to make, along with links to other websites. And I'm going to show you a few of those right now.
Please.
So there's First Voices is just an excellent website. It has a dictionary as well as learning modules, and there's an app for it too on your phone. You can do like flashcards of words and things like that. It's fantastic. This was the precursor to that. Thankful it's still online. You can either search Somali words on the left or search in English on the right for what words you're looking for. Let's see. Again, the Juno Somali learners, these guys are fantastic, and they're a great resource for, especially for beginners. All of their meetings are kind, welcoming places that you can feel safe in starting your language journey with. I wanted to show if you go to this site, and I don't know how to pronounce this because it's technically in French, but this is the museum in Geneva. If you go down here to Tales, the Prince and the Salmon, and hit Somali version, you can listen to all four stories in our language, which is terribly exciting for me. And the last thing I want to put out there is on Shop Tlingit and Haida. I've done some designs over the years. There's these superhero designs, as well as some Star Wars style formline designs. The money raised by these shirts also go to language revitalization. Oh, the other thing that the Haayk Foundation has done, and we're very proud of, but hasn't been talked about too much, is when SM'ALGYA last year put out that they were going to make a $10 million fund for language revitalization. I'm very proud that we were neck deep in the push for that to happen. And we've since partnered with Tlingit and Haida in a program that is meant for Khadkil, Tlingit, and SM'ALGYA to get high-level learners over the hump to fluency. Because we need to make those new fluent speakers as fast as possible. So I'm very grateful to Tlingit and Haida for that, and grateful to SM'ALGYA for listening. And this work is not over. There's a lot more to do. Like I said, there's a lot of us doing it. The Haayk Foundation is available to help anybody that wants it, and to cheerlead for anyone who is trying. So thank you very much. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy.
There are, yeah. And at this time too, if anyone has any additional questions, you can continue to send them through messages or in the chat below the comments section. We do have a couple of questions for you, David.
Okay.
One that came through is, what would your assessment be of the current status of the Foundation's goal of preserving the SM'ALGYA language?
That's a very good question. If I'm being perfectly honest, we have helped. We're not nearly as close as I wish we were. One of the downsides, or the hard parts of this, is that all of us have to maintain day jobs, and not just the Haayk Foundation. Everybody. We live in a world where bills have to be paid, and very often the language needs enough time from you that it takes away from your day job. We've been lucky enough at certain times to be able, like working with SHI or Tlingit and Haida, where there is some compensation, but the hardest thing about saving SM'ALGYA is you cannot be immersed unless you manufacture an immersive experience, meaning you have to bring in speakers to a place and make it the rule that we have to speak SM'ALGYA only. It's not like if I wanted to learn Italian, I could go live in Italy for 6 months and become fluent in Italian. There's nowhere to do that for SM'ALGYA. There's nowhere to go where everyone is speaking it. That makes it very hard. So 6 years for me, on top of producing the materials the Haayk Foundation has done and trying to put on the events we've done, I've been trying to learn SM'ALGYA at the same time. And even though I'm getting close, 6 years, and I'm not fluent yet. as opposed to 6 months, I could learn Italian. You know what I mean? Like it's a real challenge. So, and I'm never one to sugarcoat anything. We still have work to do. And I do wish we were further along, but we're not giving up. We made that promise to Sarah. We're not giving up.
One of the other questions that came through, you mentioned the byproduct of learning language. Were there other byproducts or experiences that surprised you in learning?
Yeah, good ones and bad ones. I've seen elders who were maybe starting to decline, pep up, color come back to their face by being able to spend time speaking their language and teaching. That's been a beautiful thing to witness. I personally, getting to the point where when I sing with our dance group on stage, that I know what I'm singing. You know, it used to be that I would just sing sounds. You know, I knew it was our language, but I didn't understand the words the way like if I were to sing in English, when I know what I'm saying. So those moments of these light bulbs coming on and you know, knowing what I'm saying, that's been amazing. The trauma I spoke about earlier also has downsides. Trauma causes people to attack each other rather than going inward and feeling, you know, trying to understand why you feel that way about something. So lateral oppression and violence is something that that all Indigenous people have to deal with because of that trauma. So again, I'm not one to sugarcoat anything. We've experienced attacks from folks for what we're trying to do, or you know, you're not doing it good enough, or you're not doing this, or you're not doing that. And, that's been, I knew it existed, but it makes it hard sometimes. The enthusiasm of people and watching the movement increase has been wonderful. And then, yeah, learning about epigenetics and all that stuff, and learning how to, you know, publish books, and there's all this stuff that I just didn't anticipate as part of it, but it's what we got to do.
So you've already spoken to this question a little bit in your answers, but what were some of your biggest obstacles or challenges, and how can we best support the work of the Haayk Foundation?
Well, again, not to beat around the bush, donations always help. If it means that we're able to compensate a fluent speaker for their time, or produce more materials, or improve our website so that we can, you know, offer better learning materials, that kind of stuff, it helps. Like I said, we've done the majority of this work voluntarily, but watch out for our fundraisers. We should be doing another one here soon. Probably a t-shirt fund or sweater fundraiser that hopefully will get to folks in time for Christmas. The way our shirt fundraisers work is that the campaign is open for a period of time. You have that period of time to order. Once that the order period is closed, then the shirts are produced and mailed out. So we'll hopefully have one of those soon. One of the biggest things, I mean, especially if you're Ts'msyen, but at this point, even if you're not, we need everybody we can get, is try to learn. I think the biggest support you could give is to do this. If you're a Ts'msyen, this belongs to you. It's not the Haayk Foundation's language. It's not anyone. It's our people's language. It's yours. It's your birthright. I hope maybe even if you've had a bad experience with it, or someone told you, oh, you're not saying that right, go find someone else to work with then. Don't give up. just because it's a challenge. It's really hard to do, but it's so worth it. And if you're not Ts'msyen, if you're Haida or Tlingit, support your own languages. We've become close with the other people who do this for the Tlingit and the Haida folks. You know, Ben Young over in Heidelberg and his wife and all of it. Those amazing people who are working over there. The Tlingit folks up in Juneau, Lance Twitchell and Goth Ginny and all of them. We all get together and kind of have I don't know, therapy sessions amongst each other, because even though we're learning different languages, we know what it feels like. There's a commonality of what happens. And so support, you know, like whether it's money, whether it's encouragement, positivity, you know, there's not a lot of public celebration for language revitalization. So any type of moral support means a lot. And more than anything else, if these are your languages, try to learn, and we'll help you as best we can.
Fantastic. And we don't have any other current questions in the chat, but we'll make certain to, put those links to the different websites and things, into the comments so that folks can, check back into them. No, I want to thank you again for joining us and letting us know a little bit more about your work and, how we can support you. That's just so phenomenal to hear the successes and the challenges both from you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.